Mark sat by his window, the weight of his struggles pressing on his chest. It had been a tough few months, jobless, overwhelmed, and uncertain about the future. He let out a long sigh, gazing at the setting sun, wishing for a change. Then he heard it, a bark. Not just any bark, but Rex's bark. His dog had been quiet all evening, so why this sudden outburst? The sound cut through the silence, urgent, unlike any bark Mark had ever heard. Mark got up, his curiosity piqued, and walked toward the backyard. Rex was sitting at the edge of the yard, fixated on a spot in the ground. His tail was still, and his eyes were wide, locked on whatever he was sensing. Mark hesitated, but then approached. "What is it, boy?" he murmured. Rex darted to a patch of earth and began digging furiously, his paws flying through the dirt. Mark knelt down, bewildered. What could Rex possibly be after? And why did this feel so important? Suddenly, Rex stopped and nudged something with his nose. An old, weathered box buried under the soil. Mark's breath caught in his throat. He reached for it, trembling. "What is this?" he whispered. As he opened the box, inside was a crumpled note and a mysterious USB drive. Mark stared at it, his mind racing. Why had Rex led him here? The dog barked again, sharp and insistent. Mark felt his pulse quicken. This was no coincidence. Something big was about to unfold, and it all began with a dog's bark. Mark stood frozen, staring at the USB drive in his hand. Rex, sitting obediently by his side, watched him with expectant eyes. The backyard was eerily quiet, and the fading light made everything feel more surreal. The thought of plugging the drive into his computer sent a chill down his spine. What if it was dangerous? What if it was some kind of trap? But Rex's intense gaze made it impossible to ignore. There was something about the dog's insistence that made Mark feel like this was more than just a random find. With a shaky breath, Mark made up his mind. "All right, Rex, let's see what we've got," he muttered, as though trying to convince himself more than anyone else. He walked back into the house, Rex following closely behind, his paws clicking on the hardwood floors. Mark sat at his desk, the dim light from his laptop screen illuminating the room. He inserted the USB drive into the port, the metallic click echoing in the silence. The screen flickered for a moment before a folder popped up on the screen. Mark's heart skipped a beat. There were no files, just one document, titled, "For the One Who Seeks." He clicked it open. Inside, the text was cryptic, almost like a riddle. The key is not just a thing, but a way. To find the path, you must know the past. Follow the coin, and the fortune will show itself. Mark read the words again, then scrolled to the bottom. There he saw another line that sent a shiver down his spine. "Beware. The pursuit comes with a cost." A cold sense of dread washed over him. What had he just unlocked? The note made no sense. What coin? And why was this cost being mentioned? Was this all part of a hidden game? Or was it something much darker? Rex, sitting beside him, let out a soft whine, as though sensing Mark's unease. The dog's eyes never left the screen. Mark ran his fingers through his hair. Should he continue? Before he could make up his mind, the phone on his desk buzzed. Mark glanced down, startled. A message had popped up from an unknown number. "You're not the first to find it, but you may be the last." Mark's pulse quickened. Who was this? And how did they know? Rex stood up, tail stiff, eyes scanning the room, as though he too had sensed the danger closing in. The message lingered on Mark's phone screen, its ominous tone sending a wave of uncertainty through him. "You're not the first to find it, but you may be the last." He stared at the words, heart pounding, his mind racing. Who could have sent this? How did they know? The air in the room felt thicker now, charged with a tension Mark couldn't explain. Rex, as though sensing the rising unease, padded over to Mark and nudged his hand with his nose. The dog's gaze was steady, calm even, as though reassuring him. Mark's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the phone to respond, but he stopped himself. What would he say? Instead, he turned back to the screen, eyes fixed on the strange riddle in the document. The key is not just a thing, but a way. To find the path, you must know the past. Follow the coin, and the fortune will show itself. Mark furrowed his brow. The coin? What did it mean? His mind flashed back to the weathered coin he had found earlier in the box. He dug it out of his pocket and placed it on the desk. The small metal piece was old, covered in a layer of grime, but the engraving was unmistakable, a strange symbol he didn't recognize. Was this the coin the message referred to? Mark's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He had to know more. What if this coin was the key to everything? What if it held the answers? His curiosity pushed him forward. He typed the symbol from the coin into the search bar, but what came up wasn't what he expected. The search results led to a thread on a dark web forum, the kind of place Mark had only heard about in whispers. It was filled with cryptic messages, obscure references to lost fortunes, and warnings for those who dared search for them. The last post was particularly chilling. If you found the coin, you've already crossed the line. No turning back now, but know this, there are others who seek the same, and not all will survive the hunt. Mark's stomach dropped. He could feel the weight of those words sinking into him. He wasn't alone in this. Others were out there, just as determined to find the hidden crypto fortune. And worse, some of them wouldn't hesitate to take drastic measures to claim it. Rex barked suddenly, snapping Mark out of his thoughts. The dog was looking toward the window, ears perked up. Mark followed Rex's gaze. Outside, the street was eerily quiet, but there was something unsettling about the stillness. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He grabbed the coin and the USB drive, stuffing them into his jacket pocket. He couldn't sit here anymore. The danger wasn't just theoretical. It was real. It was out there. And Rex, loyal as ever, was ready to stand by him. He glanced at the dog, then back at the door. Mark knew what he had to do. He had already come too far to turn back now. Mark hesitated at the door, his hand on the handle. The knock had been sharp, urgent. Whoever was on the other side knew something, and the tension in the air was suffocating. Rex growled again, a low warning that sent a shiver down Mark's spine. He wasn't sure whether to open the door or run, but curiosity, along with the weight of what he'd uncovered, pushed him forward. He needed answers. He cracked the door open slightly, peeking out. No one was there. Instead, a package lay on the doorstep, sealed with a wax stamp. Mark's pulse quickened as he reached down and grabbed it. It was heavy, unusually so. Inside, there was a letter, old and yellowed, along with more papers. Mark quickly unfolded the letter and read, "If you're reading this, then you found what I left behind. I was once like you, lost, searching for something greater. But beware, the path you've chosen is not one to tread lightly. I've hidden everything within the world of crypto, and only those who understand the past can claim it. The coin you found is the key, but you must know its origin. Find the man who gave it to me." Mark's heart raced. The letter's words were clear. He wasn't the first to stumble upon this hidden fortune, and whoever had come before him had left behind a trail that led to someone else. But who, and why the warning? Rex barked again, snapping Mark out of his thoughts. He glanced down at the dog, who was staring intently at the letter in his hands. It was clear now. There was more to this story. The coin wasn't just a key. It was part of something much bigger, tied to a dark past. Mark quickly scanned the rest of the papers. They were old documents, names, and dates, none of them making much sense at first glance. But then one name stood out, a name linked to the previous owner of the house, the eccentric old man who disappeared years ago. The man had been obsessed with crypto, and Mark now realized that he might have known more about the hidden fortune than anyone had ever imagined. Mark couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every time he looked out the window, the street appeared the same. Quiet, almost too quiet. But inside, his mind was spinning with the new revelation. The letter had mentioned a man, a figure from the past who held the answers. But who was he? And how was Mark supposed to find him? Rex, as always, was by his side, offering silent comfort as Mark paced back and forth. The dog's presence felt grounding, but there was something more in his eyes today, something knowing. Mark glanced down at the crumpled letter again, reading the final line. "Find the man who gave it to me." Who was this man? And why had he been involved in this hidden crypto world? Mark was no closer to an answer, and the mystery seemed to be tightening around him. Rex barked, snapping Mark out of his thoughts. The dog darted across the room, stopping at a dusty old bookshelf. He pawed at the base of the shelf, as though trying to pull something out. "What is it, Rex?" Mark asked, feeling a surge of curiosity. He walked over and knelt down beside the shelf. With one hand, he began shifting the books aside, and that's when he saw it, a hidden compartment. Rex had known all along. Inside the compartment was a small metal box. Mark's heart skipped a beat. Was this another clue? He opened the box carefully. Inside was a faded photograph of the old man, standing next to a man Mark didn't recognize. They were both smiling, holding a strange-looking coin. Mark studied the coin, and then his eyes widened. It was the same symbol as the one on the coin he had found earlier. This is it, Mark whispered, his voice tinged with disbelief. The photo had to be connected to the fortune. But who was this second man? Why had the old man been with him? Rex, sitting patiently beside him, seemed to understand the significance. The dog wagged his tail slowly, almost as if nodding. Mark scanned the back of the photo. There, in small handwriting, was an address. "This is it," Mark muttered. "We're going to find him." Rex barked softly, a signal of agreement, as Mark grabbed his jacket and headed toward the door. The address led Mark to an abandoned building on the edge of town, hidden away from the bustling streets. It was a place few people came to, and fewer still would think to search. Mark's breath misted in the cool air as he stood outside, his hand tightening around the coin in his pocket. Rex, as always, stayed close by his side, his ears alert, scanning the surroundings. Mark glanced at the crumpled photo again. The man in the photo with the old owner, was he still alive? The thought weighed heavily on him. If the man was part of this mystery, then surely his presence here, in this forgotten place, would be significant. He approached the building, the door creaking as he pushed it open. The air inside was stale, heavy with dust, and the faint smell of something long abandoned. The space was dark, save for the thin stream of light filtering in through cracks in the boarded-up windows. As Mark stepped forward, his footsteps echoed loudly in the empty room. Rex growled quietly, his body tense. Mark paused, instinctively reaching for his phone to shine some light. As the beam swept across the room, something gleamed in the corner, something metallic. Mark's heart skipped a beat. It was another coin, just like the one he had found earlier. But this one was different. This coin wasn't buried or hidden. It lay on a small pedestal, as though waiting for him to find it. Mark approached cautiously, the weight of the moment settling heavily on him. Was this the key to everything? As he reached out and touched the coin, a strange sensation ran through him. It was as though the air shifted, the room suddenly feeling more alive, as if it had been waiting for him. Mark held the coin, feeling its cold, smooth surface, and wondered what it all meant. Then he noticed something etched on the side of the coin. Words small but legible. "The path forward is the past revealed." Mark's stomach turned. The message felt like a riddle, but it was clear enough to him. This coin was more than just a relic. It was part of the puzzle. Rex barked, snapping Mark from his thoughts. The dog was staring at something in the distance, toward the far corner of the room. Mark turned to look. There, almost hidden in shadow, was a metal door, one Mark had missed when he first entered. It was old, rusted, but undeniably a door that led somewhere. "Rex, what are you trying to tell me?" Mark whispered, his voice barely a breath. Rex barked again, more forcefully this time, his body tense. Without another word, Mark approached the door. He pushed it open slowly, the hinges squeaking in protest. The room beyond was dimly lit, its walls lined with old crates and rusted equipment. But in the center of the room was something that caught Mark's eye. A desk covered in papers and strange, unfamiliar devices. On the desk, there was an old laptop powered on, but the screen was locked with a password. Mark walked toward it, his pulse quickening. Could this be it? The final piece to the puzzle? Mark's fingers hovered over the laptop keyboard, his mind racing. The text on the screen was clear, almost mocking. "You've come this far, but will you finish the game?" It was as if the laptop itself was daring him to continue. But what was the game? And what would it cost? Rex stood still beside him, his ears pricked, alert. Mark could feel the dog's tension, as if the air around them was thick with something ominous. "Okay, let's see what you got," Mark muttered, more to himself than to Rex. He typed in the first password that came to mind. Nothing. Then the second. Again. Nothing. Frustration mounted as he realized he had no idea how to access the laptop. Just then, a soft sound came from the doorway. Mark spun around, his heart leaping in his chest. There, standing in the dim light, was a figure, a tall man, wearing a dark coat and a baseball cap that obscured most of his face. Mark tensed, but Rex didn't bark or growl. Instead, the dog's posture softened, his body language almost relaxed. The man seemed familiar. "Who are you?" Mark asked, his voice steady despite the unease that bubbled up inside him. The man didn't answer immediately, stepping closer to the desk, his eyes scanning the laptop and the room around them. "You're not the first to find this place," the man finally said, his voice low and gravelly. "But you might be the last." Mark's stomach twisted. This wasn't just some random stranger. This man knew about the hidden fortune, about the coins, about everything. "Who are you?" Mark repeated, this time with more urgency. "And how do you know about all this?" The man finally removed his cap, revealing his face. An older man, with sharp eyes and a weathered look, as though he'd seen too much in his life. His gaze was unsettlingly familiar, like someone Mark had seen before, but couldn't quite place. "Name's Greg," the man said. "I've been looking for that coin for years." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "I see you've already made it this far, but the question is, why? What's your stake in this?" Mark stared at him, unsure whether to trust him. "I don't know why I'm here, but I'm following the trail. Rex led me to it." Greg chuckled softly. "Rex, huh? He's more involved in this than you think." Mark looked down at his dog, confusion swirling in his mind. Rex had been a guide, a constant companion, but how could he be more involved? "You really don't know, do you?" Greg said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Rex is not just a dog. He's part of the plan. The coin, the fortune. They were all meant for you, all of it. And Rex, well, he's been waiting for you." Mark's pulse quickened. "What do you mean, waiting for me?" He glanced at Rex, who was still standing calmly by his side, as if he understood everything. Greg stepped forward, his expression hardening. "It's not just the coin, boy. This isn't a game. It's a test, and you're about to find out what happens when the game's over." Mark felt his breath catch. "What does that mean?" But before Greg could answer, Rex suddenly growled, his hackles raised. The door to the room slammed shut behind them, and a shadow moved in the doorway, blocking their exit. Someone else was here. The door slammed shut with a force that sent a jolt of panic through Mark. The shadow in the doorway was unmistakable, a tall figure, cloaked in darkness, blocking their only exit. Mark's heart pounded in his chest, and Rex's growls grew louder, more insistent. The dog's stance was defensive, his eyes fixed on the figure, ready for anything. "Stay calm, Mark," Greg said, his voice low and controlled. He didn't seem nearly as rattled as Mark felt. He stepped back, his hand slipping into his coat pocket. "You're going to need to trust me now." Mark glanced at the man, confusion and fear clouding his thoughts. "What is going on here? Who are you and who's that?" Greg didn't answer immediately. Instead, he watched the figure in the doorway, his expression darkening. "That's the problem. You've attracted the wrong attention." The figure in the doorway shifted, stepping into the light. Mark's breath caught as he recognized the face. A man he had seen in the old photographs, the one with the previous house owner. This was no coincidence. Mark had been looking for answers, but now it seemed like he was trapped in something far larger than he could have imagined. "Who are you?" Mark demanded, his voice shaky but determined. "What do you want?" The man in the doorway smiled coldly, taking a slow step forward. "I want what's mine. You shouldn't have come here. This isn't your fight." Mark's mind raced. His fight? What was this man talking about? The fortune? The coin? The game? Before he could make sense of it, Greg spoke again, his voice hard and urgent. We need to go. Now. Mark barely had time to react. In the next instant, Greg pulled a small device from his pocket and pressed it against the wall. A soft beep sounded, and a hidden door clicked open on the far side of the room, leading down a narrow staircase into the darkness below. "Move," Greg commanded, already heading for the opening. Mark hesitated for a moment, looking between the man in the doorway and the escape route that was now their only option. Rex barked, snapping him out of his indecision. Without another word, Mark followed Greg, his feet pounding against the cold stone steps as he rushed to catch up. Rex darted ahead, his small form disappearing into the darkness. The door slammed shut behind them, and they descended deeper into the building, the only light coming from the flickering glow of a flashlight Greg had pulled from his bag. Mark could hear his breath ragged in his ears, his mind racing. "What was that?" Mark asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Greg didn't answer at first, just quickened his pace, the sound of their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. Finally he spoke, his tone grim. "That was one of them, one of the others who's been chasing the fortune. You're not the only one after it, but you might be the last to survive it." Mark's stomach dropped at the words. The chase had begun. He had thought it was over when he found the coin, but now he realized it was just starting. They reached the bottom of the stairs, entering a small, dimly lit room filled with old equipment. In the center, there was a large metal table, covered in papers and strange devices Mark didn't recognize. Greg moved toward a safe in the corner of the room and punched in a code, revealing another hidden compartment. Inside was a large glowing screen and a set of wires. "Here's where it gets complicated," Greg said, turning to face Mark. "The wallet you found, the one with the crypto fortune, there's a reason it's been hidden for so long, and there's a reason it's coming for you now." Mark's heart raced. He felt like a pawn in a game he didn't understand. But there was no turning back now. The dim light from the screen flickered, casting eerie shadows across the room. Mark's breath caught as the sounds of footsteps grew louder, signaling that the man in the doorway wasn't far behind. Greg was still typing quickly on the glowing screen, his fingers flying over the keys as though he were trying to beat the clock. Mark glanced at the door, his pulse quickening. It was clear that the danger wasn't over. If anything, it was just beginning. The figure from the doorway had followed them down here, and there was no telling how much time they had before the situation escalated further. "Greg, what is this place? What's going on?" Mark asked, his voice edged with panic. Greg didn't look up from the screen. "This is where it all connects. The crypto fortune, it's not just about the money. It's about control, power, the kind of power that can change everything." Mark felt a lump rise in his throat. It was clear now. This wasn't just about finding a hidden fortune. This was about something much bigger, much darker, and somehow he had been dragged into it, along with Rex. Rex, sensing the growing tension, began to pace restlessly at Mark's feet, his eyes darting toward the door and back to Greg. The dog's protective instinct was stronger than ever. Mark's hands clenched at his sides. He knew something had to be done, but the weight of the decision hung over him. He had come this far. Was it worth it to go further, or was the cost already too high? Greg finally stopped typing, his fingers hovering above the keyboard. He turned to face Mark, his expression unreadable. "We're close, Mark, but there's something you need to understand. There's always a price to pay." Mark's heart sank. "What price?" Greg's voice was low, almost a whisper. "You're not the first to follow the coin. The old man, he paid his price. So will you. It's not just about the fortune, it's about what you'll lose along the way." Mark's mind raced. The more Greg spoke, the more the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. Rex wasn't just a companion. He wasn't just a dog. He had been with Mark for a reason. But what was the reason? And what price was he going to have to pay for it all? A sudden realization hit Mark like a cold wave. What if the price was Rex? His heart skipped a beat. Could it be that in the end, the very thing he cared about most, Rex, was the one thing that could be taken away from him? Could he risk everything for a fortune that might cost him the one thing he had left? Before Mark could ask another question, the door to the room burst open with a loud crash. The figure from the doorway had followed them. Mark could see the man's face now, his cold, calculating eyes locked onto Mark with an unsettling certainty. "You're too late," the man said, his voice sharp. "The game's already over, and now, it's time for you to make a choice." Mark stood frozen, his mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. The man's words echoed in his mind. "It's time for you to make a choice." The coin, the fortune, Rex, everything led to this moment. Mark's heart raced, his thoughts spinning as the man in the doorway moved closer, his cold eyes locked on Mark. Rex growled low, standing in front of Mark as if to shield him. Mark couldn't breathe. This was it, the moment when everything would change. "You're too late," the man repeated, his voice like gravel. "The game's already begun, and now it's time for you to decide." His gaze flicked toward Rex, then back to Mark. "Make your choice, boy. What will you sacrifice?" Mark's chest tightened. Sacrifice? What did that mean? He had already come so far, yet now, standing on the precipice, he felt the weight of everything. The fortune, the coins, Rex. Was it all worth it? Could he really walk away knowing what might be at stake? Greg stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Mark, you need to understand something. This isn't just a treasure hunt. This is a battle for something far greater than you or me. But the price is real, and it's a price that will be paid." Mark's pulse quickened. "What do you mean by price?" He looked down at Rex, his loyal companion, who had been with him every step of the way. "What would happen to him?" Greg's voice softened. "The coin, the wallet, it's not just about money. It's about control over something that could change the world. But it's also dangerous. The ones chasing it, those people, will stop at nothing. And now they know you're in the game, Mark. They'll be coming for you, coming for both of you." Mark's stomach churned. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. But what did he really want? To keep going? To claim the fortune and risk losing everything? Or to walk away and keep Rex safe, but leave the mystery unsolved? The man in the doorway took another step forward, his hand reaching for something at his side. "I've been looking for that coin for years," he said with a sneer, "and you're standing in my way." Rex barked loudly, taking a step forward to protect Mark. The dog's stance was unwavering, as though he knew something Mark didn't. Mark's mind raced. He had to decide. But how could he? Could he truly ignore the fortune and just walk away? Or was this too important to ignore? Suddenly, the man lunged, his hand reaching out toward Mark. Without thinking, Rex was there, biting down on the man's wrist, forcing him to stumble back in pain. "Rex!" Mark shouted, his heart pounding. The man growled in frustration, pulling away from the dog's grip. He reached for a weapon hidden at his side, but Greg was faster. In one swift motion, he disarmed the man, knocking him back with a hard shove. "This ends now," Greg said coldly, stepping between Mark and the man. "You've crossed the line and now you'll answer for it." Mark looked at Greg, then back at the man on the floor. The fear, the confusion, it was all so overwhelming. Was it really over? Or had the real battle just begun? Greg turned to Mark, his expression serious. "It's time, Mark. The final choice is yours. We can finish this, but once we do, there's no turning back." Mark glanced at Rex, his heart torn. What would he choose? Mark stood frozen, torn between the two worlds that had collided in his life. One filled with danger, darkness, and hidden treasures. The other with love, loyalty, and the simple truth that Rex had been by his side through it all. The man on the floor groaned in pain, clutching his wrist where Rex had bitten him. Greg stood over him, eyes cold as he looked down at the would-be assailant. "This is far from over," the man snarled, his voice dripping with bitterness. "You've only just begun to understand what you've unleashed." Greg didn't respond, his focus entirely on Mark. "We're almost there, Mark. But it's not just about the fortune anymore. You need to decide if you're ready to face what comes next." Mark glanced at Rex, whose fur bristled with unease. But the dog stood firm, as always, offering silent strength. His heart raced, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Greg was right. They had come so far, but what awaited them at the end? What was the true cost? "I don't know if I'm ready," Mark admitted, his voice raw. "But what's the price? What do I lose if I go forward? Greg's eyes darkened. He stepped toward Mark, his voice quiet but heavy with truth. You've already lost, Mark. You just don't know it yet. He pointed to Rex. This isn't just a treasure hunt. This is about something much bigger, something far more dangerous, and you've been chosen to carry the weight of it. The room seemed to grow colder, the tension thick in the air. Mark could feel it. His mind reeled from the sudden realization. Chosen? He wasn't just in this by accident. There was a plan at play here, a force much larger than anything he had understood. And then it hit him. The truth he hadn't been able to face until now. The betrayal, the one he never saw coming. Mark looked at Greg, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. What are you talking about? What do you mean by chosen? Greg didn't flinch. His face remained emotionless as he spoke. You think you've been following the trail, right? You think you've been piecing things together. But the truth is, this was never about you finding the fortune. It was always about you being led to it by Rex. Mark's breath caught in his throat. Rex? The dog that had been his companion, his protector. How could this be true? Greg continued, his voice steady. Rex wasn't just guiding you to fortune. He's the key. He always has been. The one who can unlock the final door. The one who can activate the crypto wallet. The one who... Mark's heart dropped like a stone. His vision blurred. No, you're lying. Rex has been my friend, my family. He's been with me every step of the way. Greg's eyes softened, but his words were hard. You think you know him, Mark, but Rex has been more than just a dog. He's been a part of this plan for years, a part of something much bigger. And now you have a choice. You can use him to unlock everything, or you can lose him forever. The words hit Mark like a tidal wave. Lose him forever? Suddenly, the room felt smaller, suffocating. Mark turned to Rex, the dog's eyes reflecting back his confusion, his loyalty. Rex barked once, low and steady, as though trying to reassure Mark. But in that moment, the truth settled like a heavy weight in Mark's chest. Greg stepped back, watching Mark, waiting. The silence between them stretched, and the magnitude of the choice Mark had to make became clear. It wasn't just about the fortune. It wasn't just about what was hidden in the crypto wallet. It was about Rex, about what he truly meant. Mark felt a sting in his eyes. His voice cracked as he spoke. I won't let you use him. Not like this. He's not part of this game. Greg's gaze hardened. You're already too deep, Mark. You've been in the game since the moment you found that coin, and now it's too late to walk away. Your choices have already been made. Mark's blood ran cold. Betrayed. He had been used. From the moment he found the coin, from the moment Rex had started leading him through the puzzles and clues, he had been a pawn in a much larger game. Mark's hands shook as he looked at Rex, the dog who had been by his side through it all. Rex, who had led him through the mystery, who had guided him to the hidden coin, and who had protected him when danger was near. Mark felt a pang in his chest, a deep sense of betrayal and confusion. Greg stood silent, watching Mark carefully, waiting for the final decision. The truth was clear now. Rex had been a part of this from the start, a key player in a game Mark hadn't fully understood. But even now, with all the revelations, Mark couldn't bring himself to betray his dog. No, Mark whispered, his voice steady, though his heart was breaking. I won't use him. He's my friend. My family. Greg didn't respond right away. Instead, he let out a soft sigh, as though he had been expecting this answer all along. You're making a mistake, Greg said quietly. The fortune, the power, it's all there for the taking, but it won't wait forever. Mark looked down at Rex, who sat at his feet, calm and trusting. The dog had never asked for any of this. He was just a dog, a loyal, loving companion. Mark realized in that moment that what really mattered wasn't the fortune or the power. It was what he was willing to sacrifice for the ones he loved. With a final glance at Greg, Mark turned his back to him, stepping closer to Rex. We're walking away, Rex, Mark said, his voice strong. We've been through enough. Greg's expression hardened, but he didn't stop them. As Mark and Rex walked toward the exit, the sound of Greg's voice echoed in the still room. You'll regret this, Mark. The game's not over. You've chosen a side, but the consequences will follow you. Mark didn't look back. He had already made his choice. As they stepped into the cool night air, the weight of the decision began to lift from Mark's shoulders. It wasn't about fortune or power. It was about the bond he shared with Rex, the quiet moments, the loyalty, and the love that had kept them both going. Rex barked softly, his tail wagging, as though sensing Mark's relief. The world felt a little clearer now, even though Mark knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. He had given up the treasure, but in return he had kept the one thing that truly mattered, his integrity and the dog who had always been there for him. They walked side by side, the city lights shining ahead. Mark felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. No matter what happened next, he knew he had made the right choice. And in that moment, he realized something. The real treasure wasn't the fortune, the coins, or the secrets hidden in the shadows. It was the loyalty and love he had found in Rex, and the strength to walk away from the game that had tried to pull them both in. Mark and Rex continued their journey, their bond stronger than ever. The world might have tried to pull them apart, but in the end, it was their choice that defined their path. Mark didn't need the fortune to feel rich. He already had everything he needed, and with Rex by his side, he knew they could face whatever the future held together. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more thrilling tales. And hit the bell icon so you never miss an adventure with Mark and Rex. What would you have chosen? Let us know in the comments below.